Well, it's been a crazy day in British Columbia provincial politics. Not only did a new poll come out that I can talk about, but I was actually just at the announcement press conference of another BC United MLA crossing the floor to join the BC Conservatives. Guys, the BC United Party, even though I still see a few people on X trying to defend them and say, no, they could have a comeback, they could win a few seats. They can't. They're not going to win. They not only are they not going to win, they're not going to win a single seat at all. It's an irrelevant party. It satisfies nobody's interest. Like, I don't like the BC NDP at all, but I can understand why somebody would. If you're a hyper progressive, in a certain sense, they do everything that you want them to do. But if you don't like what the BC NDP is doing, you're going to go vote for the BC Conservatives because they're the opposite of what the BC NDP are. Nobody's like kind of in the mood for safe supply or wants a little bit of SOGI 123 or kind of also likes the carbon tax. Either you like it or you don't like it. And that is what this entire election is. It's a referendum on the BC NDP, which used to be the BC Liberals' agenda. And so if you like it, you might stick with them. Bad choice, in my opinion. And if you don't like it, you're going to be going and voting for the BC Conservative Party, or you can vote for the Greens. Do whatever you want. If you're going to vote, if you were thinking of voting NDP, I'd suggest you vote for the Greens, just out of pure selfish interest from my perspective. But I was at that press conference today, and I want to be a little bit selfish and give myself some credit because I think I took some pretty good photos of the announcement of former BC United MLA Teresa Wat now coming over to the BC Conservatives. That is going to help out the Conservatives a lot in the Metro Vancouver area. Of course, she is an MLA for in the city of Richmond. So this is a big coup for the Conservatives. This is going to absolutely crack open Metro Vancouver. A lot of the ridings that were previously leaning conservative are probably now going to be solidified in Metro Vancouver, and a lot of the ridings that were previously leaning or likely NDP ridings are now going to either switch over to conservative or become tough toss-up races. Even though the NDP has more money than the Conservatives, at the end of the day, voters tend to vote for what they want. Money helps raise brand recognition. It helps drive out your vote. But at the end of the day, if people don't like you, they're not going to vote for you. That's why BC United collapsed, despite for a couple quarters before this last quarter, they were out fundraising the BC Conservatives still, even though their popularity is going through the floor. Money does not buy popularity. Again, it helps you win an election you're on the cusp of winning, but like the BCU is trying to do now, it's not going to actually give you momentum despite the fact they're ballyhooing the fact that they brought in $200,000. Who cares? It really doesn't mean anything. But I'm about to get into the polling results that just came out from Research Co. But before that, I'm just going to ask you that if you live in British Columbia, go down to the description of this video below, or I'll have it pop up in this corner. Donate to the Abbotsford South BC Conservative riding. We need to win the entire Fraser Valley Abbotsford area. What we're going to do is collect money into the EDA that I'm helping in Abbotsford South with Bruce Banman. We are going to be easily fully funded very quickly, and then we're going to start to helping distribute money out to ridings that need it, that can win. We're going to try and win 100% of the ridings out here, and that requires us to be a bit strategic. So if you want to do that, it really helps us out. If you donate $100, you get 75% of it back in a tax credit. So it only costs you $25. Up to $550, it only costs you 50% because you get a 50% tax credit. And then I believe you can donate up to like $1,400 and get 33% back. Anyways, sorry for being selfish with the whole donation thing, but to beat the NDP, the Conservatives do need the money to drive out their vote. So these are the numbers that just came out from Research Co. It shows that the BC NDP is leading the Conservatives by 3 points. But I'm going to get into why this is such a great poll for the Conservatives. So we have David Eby's BC NDP at 41%, John Rusted's Conservatives at 38%, First to Know's Greens at 10%, and we have Kevin Falcon's BC United Party at 9%, with 2% going other, likely either CHP, Christian Heritage Party voters, or people who are undecided and don't know really what the race dynamics are. as close as we are to this election dropping, there are still going to be a lot of people who actually don't realize that the BC Conservatives are the main opposition to the NDP. Most people aren't, psychopaths like me and they don't follow politics all that closely. And so a lot of people probably still assume that this is going to be a BC NDP versus BC Liberal election. And with the Conservatives in, it's a very different type of race because even though the BC Liberals were always a little bit more center left and then the BC NDP were further left, the BC Conservatives completely shake things up. They don't just take the more center right voters that the Liberals used to rely on and then took, for granted when they changed the name to United and started turfing out people like John Rustad, who later became the Conservative leader. The thing is that the Conservatives actually have a lot of cross-spectrum appeal. The BC NDP may be a further left party, but it had a lot of blue-collar appeal when John Horgan was the leader of the party. John Horgan does not seem like a cocktail party politician the way that David Eby does. David Eby is an activist. He is a protester who is somehow occupying the premier's office because his own party acclaimed him after John Horgan stepped down from having cancer. John Horgan famously does not like David Eby. If you talk to anyone who knows the inner workings of British Columbia politics, John Horgan finds David Eby annoying. And his own caucus, David Eby's caucus, finds him annoying because he is a control freak and he's not even particularly competent. He is definitely radical, and that's why 8 members of his own caucus, who probably could have been reelected, have dropped out because they don't like working with him, even if they won re-election to another majority government. A lot of these people don't want to work with David Eby. That is an indictment. That's what the former Green Party leader came out and spilt out onto the floor, Andrew Weaver, basically saying, yeah, no, he's incompetent, nobody likes him, and then he actually endorsed the Conservative Party. So that has to tell you something, that conservative politics or the politics in British Columbia have been upended when Green Party politicians are coming out to slap the NDP and then saying that the Conservatives are doing a great job, people should vote for them, not even endorsing his old party, the Greens. Very funny. But yes, the NDP in this poll are leading the Conservatives. The problem is that previous Research Co polls are actually showing, I'm going to try and pull it up here, but previous Research Co polls were showing the NDP far further ahead. So this is actually a massive deterioration in the BC NDP's lead, according to Research Co. And every single pollster has its own methodology. You got to always keep that in mind, that different pollsters tend to target different people to poll them. So you have to kind of read the polls based on the way that they conduct themselves. And this poll from Research Co. is online. They tend to have a big Metro Vancouver sample compared to other pollsters, which means that it is going to be a little bit more of an NDP leaning poll. Not intentionally, that's just the way they do it. Online polls tend to also get a lot more younger people, which the NDP relies on the votes of a lot of students. And still, you see a massive rise for the BC Conservatives. Back at the very beginning of the year, January 2024, they had the Conservatives at 25%, United 17%, and the NDP way up there at 46%, a 21%, a 21-point lead. Next one had the lead shrink to just 18 points, and then it shrunk to just 10 points, just 7 points, and now it's shrunk to just 3%. And the problem for the BC NDP is, although based on the seat projections from this poll, they would still win a majority. It's basically a two-party province. It's either one's going to win a majority or the other one, unless it's a real squeaker and the Greens have like the one seat that prevents either one from getting a majority. But it's a province where it's going to be either way. But the NDP, if the Conservatives can gain a few more points, are easily going to win this election. And the reason is because the areas where they have the ability to make gains, the Conservatives are the only party that can make gains. Like the NDP can become defensive where they can make gains in places where they're already popular to try and stave off the Conservatives. But the NDP has no ability to go on the offensive to try and win other seats elsewhere. The problem is they can pretty much just protect what they have now and maybe try and keep the BC Conservatives from winning some Metro Vancouver ridings, but they have no ability to pick up old BC Liberal ridings. Now, what I mean by that is that while the NDP is ahead on Vancouver Island, Victoria, and Metro Vancouver, In the other areas of British Columbia, they're way behind, where even if they gain 5 or 6%, they're not winning maybe more than 1 or 2 seats. It's right now in many areas, they're winning 0 seats. And it would take a massive increase in support in those areas for them to even get close to winning anything. So here's what the Research Co poll had said. It says the BC NDP is ahead of the BC Conservatives and Metro Vancouver, 44% to 35%, and Vancouver Island, 43% to 32%, while the BC Conservatives lead the BC NDP in Northern BC, 57% to 31%, and the Fraser Valley, 47% to 28%. So you see the difference there. Yes, there are more seats in on Vancouver Island and Metro Vancouver compared to Northern BC and the Fraser Valley, but at the same time, the margins that the NDP are leading in their favored areas are far smaller than the areas where the Conservatives are leading. So a 3% change, a 4 or 5% change in the vote in the Metro Vancouver area and on Vancouver Island would result in the Conservatives potentially winning 10, 12, 15% more seats, or 15 more seats. Whereas if the BC NDP started doing 5 or 6 points better in the Fraser Valley, probably wouldn't really change much at all. Northern BC really wouldn't change much. I think they have 1 seat in Northern BC that they still have. And, plus or minus a few points, it really doesn't make a difference. So that is why the BC Conservatives, this is such a good poll for them. Yes, they're behind, but it's a poll that never favored them, and they're still making massive gains. They've gone up 4% since the last one was done. And on top of that, this poll showed that David Eby was becoming much less popular. He is still the most popular leader, but it's just because John Rustad doesn't have the highest name recognition still. But a big problem for Eby is that he's actually lost his approval rating has gone down. I don't need to bring it up on screen, no worries. But his approval rating has actually shrunk by 5%, where I believe he only has an approval rating of like plus 10 right now, which that sounds good compared to other leaders like Kevin Falcon, who's at a minus 21% rating. But at one point, David Eby was the most popular premier in the country. He had like a plus 30 rating. Now it's only plus 10. It's deteriorating fast. And again, this is a poll that is going to favor Eby more than disfavor him the way Main Street does. And so this is not good numbers for the NDP. If this is the best numbers that they have, they probably will lose the election. In the next Main Street poll, the last one had them tied. I don't doubt the next one will probably have the BC Conservatives leaning. So if you're you're in BC, please donate to the BC Conservatives. At this point, the only big advantage that the NDP has is in money. So $100, it only costs you $25 to donate $100. There's a link in the description below. And I guess there's not really much else for me to talk about. But yeah, I'm out here in Abbotsford South. I'm trying to make sure that the Conservatives all have their candidates up to speed, that we're hitting all the doors. This is a very winnable election. The problem, again, is that the BC NDP have nothing really new to announce. I've heard a lot of people say that as the NDP has been announcing new initiatives, new programs, new spending items, their polling has only kept deteriorating because nobody's really waiting for a new program. No one's waiting for a fresh vision from the NDP. The NDP's character and brand is very baked into the cake at this point. People know what David Eby is mostly all about. They either like what the NDP is doing or they don't like it. And most people don't like it. In issue-based polling, when you ask them, how is the NDP government doing on healthcare? It's like 78% of people think the healthcare is bad in the province. You ask people about education, drugs, crime, all these issues, taxes, affordability, the government is way underwater on all those issues. I think their best issue is their ability to negotiate with the federal Liberal government, which is obviously going to be something that they have good ratings on since they are an NDP government and the federal Liberals are very left-wing like they are. But that's the only thing that they actually have a positive rating on. Everything else, nobody thinks they're doing a good job. And so that is what also gives the Conservatives an advantage. Conservative voters are going to be passionate. They're going to be driven to get Eby out. Whereas Eby NDP voters, really, what are you doing? You're just showing up to defend Eby and just keeping us on the course that we're on. And the course isn't great. You might be scared into thinking that the Conservatives are, going to do bad things. The media might put out some hit pieces saying that the Conservatives are going to cut spending to healthcare, which they're not. It's stupid. No party has ever run on cutting healthcare. No party has ever cut healthcare in Canada since the federal Liberals did back in the 90s. It's a complete distraction. But unless you're somebody who's voting NDP because you've been spooked into thinking that the Conservatives are scary, you don't really have that much of a motivation showing up and voting for the NDP unless you're like a hyper downtown Vancouver, downtown Victoria progressive. And those people are very much on a popularity decline as people see the results of the policies that those people favor. Yeah. So I think a lot of stuff is going to be happening over the next week. A lot of exciting announcements might be coming out. I'm going to be helping to fight it out here. So if you guys want to support me and if you don't live in British Columbia, you can donate to my legal fund in the description below. And other than that, I'll see you guys in my next video. Have a great one.